Yeah, thank you. In order to understand how the City of Adelaide could be used to assist maritime promotion, we need to understand both the history of the ship and the history of the campaign, because both are quite interrelated. The ship itself was built in 1864 and was purpose-built to bring people to Adelaide. Now, at the time it was built, what you're looking at there was a pretty common scene in the Port River. Just an absolute forest of masts, and that reasonably would have been fairly, typical at the time. Of all those ships that brought passengers, only one survives today, and that's the clipper ship, the City of Adelaide, built in 1864. It was purpose-built to bring immigrants to South Australia, to Adelaide, do 23 return journeys. It's the only surviving ship that brought passengers to Australia. And what we believe is that today it can bring people to Adelaide yet again in a different role. That gives a bit of a context. It's the length of in that case, a 747. In terms of understanding the campaign to move it, it actually weighs 3 times the weight of the Jumbo. So in terms of what had to move. Now, it was a passenger carrier. It was a Queen Mary 2 of its day. So it obviously carried a lot of people, could carry up to 300 passengers. The one on the left, Waite family, somebody mentioned Bray House earlier on in one of their presentations, was owned by Peter Waite. Matilda Methuen, who became Matilda Waite, came out in 1864. The ship has had a variety of lives, 23 journeys to Adelaide, became a collier in the North American timber trade, was an isolation hospital in Southampton for infectious diseases for 30 years. The Royal Navy took it over, moved it to Scotland, renamed it the Carrick. And then 25 years ago it sank and it was under threat of demolition, and we started a campaign to save it. Fortunately, we found somebody who was willing to be part of the campaign, or at least lend his name to it. But he was reasonably interested and active, and having the Duke of Edinburgh on board certainly gave it international status. Now, in terms of who we are, who look after the ship, we're a 100% volunteer organisation. We're a registered not-for-profit. We're tax deductible. The coat of arms you see in the centre down the bottom there is what's in the Adelaide Town Hall today, and that's what was on the stern of the vessel when it was built and named the City of Adelaide. Now, the campaign to move it, we had a ship that was believed by many to be immovable, which is why it was going to be broken up. It was on private property and they wanted the land back. So we designed this cradle, basically like a giant Meccano set. And what you're looking at there is $1 million, 100-tonne steel cradle that was designed here and shipped over to Scotland in those shipping containers you see in the centre there. The cradle had to be assembled in Scotland. It went through a certification process by their equivalent to Safe Work SA. Because the loads were lifting, the bulldozers came in, excavated under the ship, jacked it all up. You see the bulldozers there working under it. You'll also notice the square windows there in the ship. Now, they're totally unseaworthy. When the ship was going to sea, they weren't there, but they were put in when it was an isolation hospital in 1893. So it's actually got a medical history as well. But as a design, there is no other ship on the planet like that. This photo is starting the journey south. The contract we had with the Scottish Government and the Scottish Maritime Museum is when the ship left Scottish soil, we took ownership of it. That's the point we all looked at each other and said, God, I hope our insurance is up to date. But at that point, the ship is Australian owned. Now, going back to earlier allies, on the way back home, we stopped at Greenwich. The Duke of Edinburgh renamed the ship from Carrick, which was known as, when the Navy owned it, back to City of Adelaide. Half the world's press were there at the time. It has an unbelievable level of knowledge and history. So when I say we need to tap into the campaign, not just the ship, it goes back to that. This is in Port Adelaide. We're offloading the ship from the heavy lift ship on the left to the barge Bradley on the right. That's the largest lift ever undertaken in Port Adelaide by cranes. We're looking at about a 600-tonne lift there. It got undertaken in Dock 2 because the heavy lift ship was too big to get through the opening bridges into Dock 1. We then got it into Dock 1 and held a giant party. That was in May 2014 when the ship arrived. Last year the ship turned 151. It's turning 152 next month. It's now being visited by people of all ages. We do tours 7 days a week, 3 times a day, plus also groups who come down as organised tours. It covers older people on the left, school kids on the right, huge numbers of people coming down continually. We're also now starting to use the ship internally. We've had, on the left you see a black tie fundraising function being held inside the ship, huge fundraiser, Martin Hazy there as a speaker. On the right we've got young kids from the Bright Spark Science Group who came along and built little lanterns. In terms of promoting maritime heritage tourism, the ship has international status. Use it. Build on the knowledge of the campaign to save it. Form a critical mass, not just with the Port Adelaide, but all the riverboats across the state. Visit the port, visit the rivers, build on the experience, visit coffee shops. Our vision is to have a seaport village in preferably Fletcher's Slip in Port Adelaide, where the ship will be on land as the centrepiece of a seaport village, of a tourism precinct, but which will be a feeder for everything around the port, Adelaide, South Australia, Australia. And for lots more information, there's the website and our Facebook page. Thank you.